No lizards. No aliens. No nonsense. This is Reality Bytes in association with Sovereign Independent UK and One World Chronicle.
Welcome to Reality Bytes Radio on the 6th of February 2014. And we've got our guest, Chris Spivey, on the line. We'll be talking about, I think, Madeleine McCann, the Lee Rigby situation, and numerous other topics, I suppose. I just want to start off by talking about the Violate Club. I mentioned it last week, and Robert Green's put up some more information on it. I'll just read out what he's put down here. Here are further details of the status of some members of this exclusive and illustrious club that also provides life-size dolls of children for the entertainment of these people. 4 sheriffs and partners, 2 ex-partners of sheriffs, 2 High Court judges and partners, 2 Procurator Fiscals and partners, 6 ex-partners of Procurator Fiscals, 16 court staff, 37 staff from Scottish Government departments, and 17 primary school teachers. That's the kind of people that are teaching your children, folks. Chris.
Hello, Neil.
What would you say to that?
Well, it's disgusting, isn't it? But
absolutely.
As we know, these things do go on, mate. I mean, they've been going on for well, at least since the 50s. You look at the stuff that McAlpine was involved in and whatnot, you know, and it doesn't come as any surprise to me at all, mate.
Yeah, nor me. But it does surprise me, the stupidity of these people to use their credit cards to pay for things like this. But there you go. That's just shows you how stupid these people are.
Yeah, they just issue notices, don't they? So
yeah. Exactly. Okay, Chris. What's your big topic of the morning? I think it's the Lee Rigby or Madeleine McCann, or well, both really, I suppose. You just kick in with the one you want to start with, and although what I normally do is I introduce the guest and I say, how did you get into this? So how did you get into this kind of work, as it were?
I sort of fell into it, really, Neil. To be honest with you, I mean, I've always been a bit way out there, shall we say, and I used to do very long statuses on Facebook talking about current things or whatnot, and then I started writing for the Sovereign Independent, as it happens. That would have been about 2011 sometime, I believe, and I wrote 3 or 4 months for them, quite successfully, and someone set a website up for me. So obviously when I first started writing, I was writing for like 40, 50, 60 people a day, and I picked up on the Fukushima disaster, or man-made disaster, should we say. And that led to an activist who's working over there to contact me, and we threw a few things about and whatnot. And she mentioned me to a doctor in there over in Japan, who got in contact with me. This gave me a big following over in the East, and then David Icke picked up on a few of my articles. Of course, when he publishes you, sort of floodgates open, and it just sort of carried on from there. Since then, I've exposed quite a few people. I've exposed a lot of corruption at the NSPCC. That led to a big spat on Twitter with Tom Watson, who made himself look a right fool. And I say a couple of big exposés, and here I am, talking to you. You there?
Somehow we lost Neil. I'm gonna
How
grab him
strange
back
is
real
that,
quick.
Paula? How strange is that?
It's just lovely to happen when we have Chris Spivey on.
Hello?
Hello,
There
Neil?
we go.
Yeah.
Did you get all that, or was I rambling to myself?
I think you were rambling yourself. I think you got cut off at David Icke, but that was fine because I don't want to talk about that, Becca, anyway.
Yeah. Carry on then, mate.
I think we're all fair at the moment, are we, Paula? Paula.
No, you're live.
Oh, we're live. Okay, fine. Well, I just said I don't want to talk about that Becca, David Icke. So there you go. That's gone out live. Never mind.
No, that's fine. No, that's just how I got where I am. So let's back to life.
He used to take some of my stuff as well, but there you go. What can you do? So anyway, just carry on from where you were.
Yeah. Well, that's more or less it, Neil. I say, the readers started to flood in from there, and they've done since. Did you get a bit about the Tom Watson spat?
No.
No. Well, I wrote a damning article on the NSPCC, which had been offered to the mainstream media, the Daily Mirror and the Daily Express, I believe, if I remember rightly, and Panorama was going to take it as well, and they got pressure put on them to back out of it. So, in desperation, these 3 whistleblowers from the NSPCC came to me, and I went with a story, and it got very big. And what the story was about the NSPCC employing South Africa's most wanted terrorist, who entered this country in 1990 illegally on a false passport, but was somehow allowed to stay. And from there, he was fast-tracked up to a social worker, and he ended up the head of Blackpool's grief counselling, Acorn Grief Counselling Centre, which belongs to the NSPCC. And these whistleblowers found this out, and I say they took it to the papers who were going to run with it, and Panorama, and all of a sudden they pulled out, saying, one of them quoted saying, "pressure from above." And I went with it. This led to a big spat with Tom Watson on Twitter, because a lot of people was at the time. Tom Watson was he just asked that question, the one in Parliament, and a lot of people were sending this article to him, and because Tom Watson was also plugging the NSPCC, and asking him to respond, and he wouldn't. And then he got put in a position where he had to respond, which ended up with me and him having a spat, and he made a right mug of himself. But you know what these MPs are like. Once they get faced with real questions, they're lost for words. And so it was then like, oh, I don't know who you are, but I found you a bit intimidating, which was both a lie. He did know exactly who I was, and he did know exactly what I was on about. And so I just say, like, you're mugging yourself off. He just dug a hole went deeper for himself. It's all on my website. If you type in NSBCC, it'll come up. And I say that sort of didn't do me any harm. And then it's just, just sort of rolled from there, Neil. So,
yeah. Well, yeah. Have you got speakers on, Chris?
I have. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing myself coming back, but never mind.
Can you? Yeah. I don't know what I can do about that.
You got headphones?
I haven't, no.
All right, no bother.
But I did have, but like everything else in this house, they go walkabouts. I have an 18-year daughter who's fond of bothering things without asking, and I'll never see him again.
Yeah.
No well, sometimes it helps if the mic is muted in between answering. It's kind of a pain, though. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, I had my own story about Tom Watson.
Sorry?
I had my own story about Tom Watson as well, because I went to see a local MP in Luton, Gavin Shuker, who's on the sex trafficking committee, and we talked about the monetary system, and then we just hit him with why is Tom Watson gone quiet on child abuse? And I've never seen a politician's face change within the space of a fraction of a second. And he's basically said, "How dare you slur Tom Watson?" I said, I just asked why he'd gone quiet on child abuse. I never slurred anybody. And he said, well, thank you for your time. Goodbye.
No, that was it. I think everyone knows who does know what's really going on there. I think everyone knows that that question was a setup anyway.
Absolutely.
It was sort of off the cuff, and it didn't take Cameron by surprise at all.
It was well scripted. Okay, Chris, let's get into your website. That's chrisspivey.org. And, your top stories. What do you want to talk about?
Well, at the moment, I'm ignoring everything else and my pedal for the Woolwich incident, because I've written extensively about Woolwich already, and I believe that the court case, the trial that took place in December, was probably one of the most important, if not the most important, court cases to happen in English modern history. Because without a doubt, Woolwich was a setup, and I think I've probably done more than enough anyway to prove that it was a setup. But I had to sort of cover this trial because it was a sham, and what sort of went on there. You sort of got witness statements being read out. Well, you can't cross-examine a witness statement, can you? But these witness statements, they're coming back from the people who were there, obviously, but they've got details on them that wasn't divulged at the time, and there's no reason why they wasn't divulged at the time, except now to make their case more credible. For instance, Amanda Donnelly, one of the so-called Three Angels of Woolwich. She did extensive newspaper interviews at the time, back in May and June, and she never mentioned this letter that sort of they made a great big thing of in court. Now, why didn't she mention that? Similarly, a fellow called Graham Wilder, who was never off the telly back in May, he had a statement read out, which had uniformed police fighting with a chap while this sort of so-called beheading was going on. Well, this never came out at the time, and I don't think Graham Wilder could have said any more if he'd have tried at the time. But I say it never came out. But all of a sudden, you have this uniformed copper, fighting with this fella. At the time while Woolwich is going on. And the only reason that was introduced is because they're saying that the uniformed police were there, but they kept back. They didn't sort of intervene because it was too dangerous, which is a lot of tosh, you know, say from photographs and whatnot that I've been able to gather. There was no police there at all, none whatsoever. So I say this is taking all my time up, Neil. I'm up to 19,000 words already, which is, you know, by the time I've finished, it will be a book. But I believe that it is so important that everything has to be detailed, and I don't want to give the trolls or debunking sites any room for manoeuvre, because, say, without a doubt, it's a false flag. And without a doubt, the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, the head of the Metropolitan Police, they're all involved in it. And they need exposing, you know. So I say that's taking all my time at the moment, but hopefully within the next couple of weeks that will be up, and I'm hoping for big things from it, because there's information on there that has never been revealed. I pulled across another couple of things to prove that it was a false flag, and I say that they've never been revealed as far as I'm aware before. So hopefully that'll go well.
Yeah. Are you going to plan to put it out as a book?
So no. I don't believe in making money as such, Neil, from information. I know some websites charge, and some use adverts. Well, good luck to them. I don't believe in that, because I believe that this information should be free to all. Now, I've been offered, advertisers have offered to buy space on my website, and I've turned them all down. And I say I could do like some do, and you know, sort of release keep the juicier information to myself, and have a subscription charge for it. But that's not me at all, Neil. I do this full time, and I am dependent on donations, but the donations are entirely to enable me to carry on, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Maybe you put it as a PDF that people can download, you know, and if it's so big.
Well, yeah, that's one. I say it's not the way I work. I've always, I mean, my articles are known for being long and detailed anyway, which I believe is important, because it may sound counterproductive to say that people's attention spans are very short, but I find that if someone doesn't understand something, straight away they lose interest, you know, rather than persevere with it. So what I tend to do, I tend to oversimplify things and over-explain things, you know. And if it's an ongoing situation, I instead of just carrying on and assuming that everybody knows what happened at the start of something, I will revisit that ground, and that tends to make my articles longer. I say it seems to work anyway, because a lot of people seem to read them. So
yeah, I have had that said to me before by people that say, "Oh, there's a certain way of writing for the internet or whatever, and they should be short. That people have got a short attention span." Well, I don't care. I mean, if people want to read it, they'll read it. It doesn't matter, you know, and make it as long as you like. I do it. My articles are long purely because I do over-explain things, and I say revisit ground, like I'm doing with this Woolwich one at the moment. I say because a lot of people don't know what went on. They don't know that the bus was sort of parked there as an obstruction and to carry the actors, you know, because it looks like it's just parked at a bus stop, which it isn't. It isn't a bus stop there at all. But rather than assuming that people just know this, I say I will go back over that ground to explain that there isn't no bus stop there, so the bus shouldn't be parked there at all, you know. Yeah. Okay. We'll go to a piece of music, and we'll come back and possibly move on to Madeleine McCann or any other topic you want.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Reality Bytes Radio with our guest Chris Spivey, and I think we're going to move on to Mark Duggan, the chap who was shot last year, which was supposedly the instigator of the riots. I was saying to Chris off air, we were in Luton Town Hall on Tuesday evening. It's the first time the town hall's actually been given over to the public because the local councillors have backed the family. I don't suppose they had any choice, because if they hadn't backed them, I think they wouldn't have been voted in the next time round. But basically what happened to this lad, he was allegedly killed in the back of the police van and propped up by police officers until they got him past the CCTV cameras, pretending he was still alive, and then basically dropped him on the floor and said he just died, just like that. But I think something more is going to come out of that. I think these police officers aren't going to get away with this time. My colleague at the Community Press Group, as people well know, listen to this, is an ex-police officer who tried to expose corruption on many levels in his 31 years there. He was looking at the figures since 1969. There have been something like 2,500 deaths in police custody and not one conviction. So I think just the odds alone tell you there's something far, far wrong within the judiciary and the police service. But anyway, Chris, we'll move on to Mark Duggan, which is another case in point along the same lines, really.
Yeah, well, Mark Duggan, for anyone who doesn't know, like you said, he was the supposed gangster who was shot by police. Now, if you remember at the time, Neil, they were saying it was a big shootout. A policeman had been shot, and the police radio had been shot, which subsequently turned out to be totally untrue, because he wasn't armed. Indeed, he did have a gun. I'll come to that in a minute. But he wasn't armed, and he was murdered. To put it in the true context of the word, because I say they could have easily taken him in without shooting him at all, because he didn't offer any resistance. And the verdict came back as lawful killing. Well, I don't see how you can have a lawful killing when the death penalty isn't enforced in this country. You know, there's no such thing as a lawful killing. But it turns out that there's a lot more to it than what the newspapers are saying, because I received a report that was also sent to Bernard Hogan-Howe, the head of the Metropolitan Police, and it transpires that Mark Duggan was set up. I'm not going to say who he was set up by, because that would get me killed. But he is a member of a well-known, well, they have all different names for them, don't they? There's Garage and whatnot, but they're all rappers to me, you know, gangster rap. He's a member of a well-known group who was also responsible, or questioned, should I say, for stabbing the rapper Dizzy Rascal. And he's the head of the Tottenham Mandem gang, which are, by Trident's own admission, the second most feared gang in London at the moment. And I say, what it was that they got hold of one of these high-ranking members of Tottenham Mandem and their break-off North Star, and he was an informant, but all the information, instead he was pulled in for murder, and it was quite sort of like, you know, either you tell us what you know and dob your mates in, or we're going to proceed with this murder charge. And so he agreed to become an informant, but all the information he was giving was they wasn't able to do anything about it, because he would have been incriminated himself, if you like. So what they started doing between them to justify their budget and whatnot is setting people up. And Mark Duggan was one of those who was set up. He was the gun wasn't for himself; it was supposedly for someone else. Well, this is the cover story that was given. And he went to pick it up, and the fellow who set him up even suggested that he take a taxi, which obviously you'll know that he did. And there was no way that they could leave him alive, because to do so would have exposed this informant as a glass, if you like. So I say the police shot him, murdered him, and the Metropolitan Police Chief, he's aware of this fact, and then there's a great big long article on my site called Mark Duggan, Broadwater Farm, and a Morning from History, because I also cover how the Tottenham Man who the celebrity gangster is leader of, how they came about, and it covers Winston Silcott and whatnot, and there's a terrifying report of what happened to Keith Blakelock, the policeman who was killed. Now, I didn't write the report, it's what I just published in this article, and it must have been terrifying, isn't it? No two ways about it. It was terrifying for the police, and they did hack the fellow to pieces. But I can see this happening again, Neil, because the way things are going, people are going to riot. When you talk about ATOS, what they're doing to disabled, and they're dying by the thousands, having been found fit for work when clearly they're not. I mean, I see that they even found someone fit for work the other week who was in a coma. So I'm not sure how that works. But the government keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and people are going to riot again. And the police need to know what they face when people do riot, because there's a lot more rioters than there are policemen.
Well, I think Boris Johnson knows that the riot's coming, because he wants to get a couple of water cannon for the City of London, so he must know something that we don't, I suppose.
Well, funny enough, when I was writing for the Sovereign Independent, actually, and I did make mention of this in an article I did for them, because all of the BBC reporters, from even those who are on local BBC radios, they've been sent on how to report from a riot situation, of course, and I say that's down even to the ones who normally just cover faiths and mothers' meetings and whatnot. They've all been on this course to learn how to report from a riot situation, and that was back in 2011, mate.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've certainly been tooled up for it, and they're all looking like RoboCop, and just coincidentally, we've got the new RoboCop movie coming out, so, it's there looks like there's definitely going to be trouble this summer, and, if we look at the Mark Duggan case, I mean, are they going to set up somebody else to kick it off? Who knows?
Well, no, I think the report, although I've had to heavily censor it, you can still make sense of it, if you like, even though it's censored. And it was censored before I got it as well, in as much as the names was taken out, but it's not hard to work out who the names were, hence I've had to censor it again, because if I can work out who's who, then other people can, But I say the fact that Bernard Hogan Howe knows about this, and incidentally, Bernard Hogan Howe was very, very involved, as was Boris Johnson, in the Woolwich hoax. So there's two instances straight away of the police sort of being a law unto themselves.
Yeah, and of course Boris came out with the broom at the end of the Tottenham riots as if he was going to sweep up himself as well, and was booed off the street, I believe.
A lot of people are under the misconception that Boris Johnson is a lovable buffoon. Now, nothing could be further from the truth. He is a cousin of David Cameron's, as happens. But he's a very, very, very intelligent man, and he's a very, very dangerous man. And make no mistake, that the buffoon part is just an act. It's nothing more. The man couldn't be further from a buffoon if he tried, and he's a very, very dangerous man. And this is why they're touting him as possibly the next leader of the Conservative Party, either him or Theresa May, who, once again, Theresa May is a very, very dangerous man in a woman's body. And both of them, the last thing you want is them to be ahead of the Tories.
Yeah, I've always said it's you've got to be very, very intelligent to act like the buffoon in front of the cameras on a regular basis. You have to be very, very intelligent and very controlled. and know exactly what you're doing to give that impression.
Make no doubts about it, Neil. No doubts about it whatsoever. Boris Johnson is nothing like a buffoon. I say he's a very, very clever man. He run rings around most people, intelligence-wise. I know. Even when he's been in trouble, he acts the buffoon. Like when he got caught out, when he got questioned about the affair, and when he got questioned about giving the name and address of the reporter who exposed that jewel thief. I can't remember his name. Who went to Oxford with him back in the 90s. When he got asked about that by Andrew Marr on the Sunday show, he sort of went into buffoon mode because there was no comebacks. But he was deadly serious about it. He's a very, very, very dangerous man.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of dangerous men and women out there, all unfortunately in positions of power. And it's I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to go down the Freeman route, we've got to do this, we've got to get out of this society." But I do think the only way to do it is to use the system there and get in at the bottom and just.
Well, you out. I don't know. To me, this can get kicked about, and even in the hour or so whatever we got left, you couldn't fully discuss it, Neil. What needs to be done, but yourself that the whole system needs to be changing. This system isn't working. It's never going to work, and the whole thing's got to be changed. And start again. Of course, that in doing so involves all manner of problems, but that's the only way forward. If there's to be any hope for mankind, as far as I can see, mate, because at the moment, I say that the whole system is designed for the elites, and even your average millionaire isn't going to be spared. Unless you're part of the club. The rest of us, it don't matter if you've got 3 or 4 million in the bank, or whether you've got £3 or £4 in the bank. We're all to them we're nothing, easily dispensed with, and we are being dispensed with. Make no mistake about it. In fact, I saw an article in the paper today that they're expecting a cancer epidemic. Well, as far as I was aware, we've already got an epidemic. We're down to less than or more than 1 in 3 is getting cancer now. Whereas at the turn of the century, 1900s, it was 1 in 100. So how's that come about? And you've only got to look at our water supply, what they're spraying us with, what they're putting in our food and whatnot, and we are purposely being killed off. Child vaccines are another one. I've had my grandson's 8 months old now. And although it wasn't my choice, I obviously spoke to my daughter about it. They both live with me, incidentally. And I told her the danger of vaccines, and thankfully she listened, and he hasn't been vaccinated. But cool, we did get some pressure from where we're constantly getting letters from the doctors and whatnot, telling us that Clayton hasn't been vaccinated, and we need to get in there now to vaccinate him. And there's no way on earth I'm going to let them put that poison in him, because this is what they're doing, because it is a ticking time bomb they're putting into children, into babies, a ticking time bomb that that sort of comes back in the shape of cancer and autism and things like that. And people need to realise this. Why are they paying for the privilege of drinking water that's poisoning them, and going to give them cancer? Why are we having to eat foods that have been sprayed with chemicals that require a full bodysuit, to spray them with? Why are we having things dropped on us from the air? I mean, you've only got to look at the weather, Neil. You never see sun no more. Even in the summer, you don't see the sun. It's just a haze.
Yeah, but we had a research doctor, David Lim, in the office yesterday, filming a couple of presentations. Well, the same presentation twice. He did it twice to get a good quality video together. And the information he's got on the spraying, the geoengineering, we'll call it, is incredible. And for the guy who came round to help us with the lighting and stuff used to train BBC cameramen. So he was, he's well used to the kind of BBC kind of view of things. And he stood there for the first take, and he had to go outside after the first take. And my colleague asked him if he was all right. He says, I'm a bit shaken. And he says, why? He says, well, the information. I said, I can't believe it. And then he had to come back in and do the second take. And he was absolutely shocked. He just couldn't get his head around it. But he believed it, He couldn't understand it.
And that's all well and good. If they do believe it, then because the information, as you know, Neil, it is shocking and in many cases almost unbelievable. But that doesn't make it not true. And fair play to the fella. He had to go outside and calm himself down. But he came back in and believe it. Then that is the battle won. But the thing is, people are choosing to dismiss it without even reading it. Yeah.
Well, the final quote on that presentation was the Einstein quote: "Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance." And I think that's what you have to get into people's heads. You can't slag us off unless you've looked at it yourself properly.
That's fine, Neil. But you know yourself, mate. We're banging our heads against a brick wall because even people who claim to be, for want of a better word, awake, and I don't like that word really, but as I would use it for now, aren't really awake, just because you know about 9/11 or you know about GMO modified foods or chemtrails, that doesn't make you awake. That just makes you informed, And I think at the moment it is quite trendy to be perceived as being awake, but being awake is totally different from being informed. And I see this so many times. I mean, I as you can imagine, upset quite a few people on a daily basis, and I've had people who've been professing to be awake and whatnot, and then when you write something that they don't like, or take out, the people's voice, that piece I did on that, and they're quick to turn against you simply because they don't want to know about that. Well, this comes back to like your man. He could accept that, and I'm the same myself. I can accept anything that I will investigate. If someone tells me something, even about someone, I was like, if someone told me that my daughter was working for the security services, I would investigate it first before dismissing it out of hand, And but I say that these so-called awakened people, they're fine, and they're all quick to tell you how great and what a good job you're doing. But then as soon as something comes on that they don't like, or they don't want to believe, despite the evidence, they're turning against you,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know well. But as you say, like that term awake. I don't know where that term came from, to be honest. But there's a difference between awake and
it's as good as any.
Yeah.
I don't particularly like saying. I don't like the word conspiracy theorist.
I say to people, do you know where that term came from? And they go, okay. Oh, well, yeah. I say, well, it came direct out of the Soviet Union for anybody that didn't agree with the government. And they go, I don't believe that. I say, well, believe what you like, But that's where it came from. And political correctness, blah blah blah,
Yeah, I get labelled a conspiracy theorist, although I don't view myself as such. Simply because what I tend to do is I tend to use all my sources, mainstream media, on their heads and point things out, which to me are obvious, which to other people aren't. But I'm very careful to try and use the mainstream media as a source because people put so much store by it, And so I don't do all the lizards things and whatnot. And I have my own views on it, but I keep them to myself. But I don't put all that out there. So to me, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a journalist, if you like. And I say sourcing from the mainstream media because that is what people believe. But if it's in papers, then it's true, and that way then there's no refuting what I say, you know.
I mean, the real conspiracy theories are in the mainstream media, if anywhere, because they don't check the facts. They don't. I mean, you come across so many articles in between different newspapers. They've just cut and pasted it from each other. They don't even. There's so many. There's so many spelling mistakes and everything in them. It's pathetic. These guys are supposed to be professionals.
Well, they're teachers, aren't they? That's all they are. I say that, you know, like I said, almost one report is identical to the next, and no one's left the office or done their own individual research into it, you know, because if they had, and if they was honest and not controlled, then we'd be living in an entirely different world, you know, than what we are if they reported anything near the truth. But instead, it's just made up old fanny, you know, and stories of celebrity, which people have got to get out of this cult of celebrity, you know. They've got to, because most of them, all the very famous ones, the rich ones, they're all involved. You know, when you look at Bruce Willis and Tom Cruise and whatnot, you know, then they're all wrong uns, mate. Yeah, people fawn over them, you know. It's just ridiculous. It makes no sense to me. They're just people, you know. They're people living in a make-believe world. Or, you know, they're not heroes. They're not, you know, they're not good guys. They don't like you. Yet people, you know, would die and defend their name. And the papers know this, and I say all we get is just a load of old fanny on irrelevant things and celebrity instead of reporting on the real issues.
Yeah, I remember my first, I suppose it'd be my first contact with celebrity, in inverted commas. I must have been about 17 or 18, and I was with a crowd of my mates, and the Damned and the Stranglers were playing in town the same night. And they were walking up the road together, and there was a gang of us, about 7 or 8 of us, walking down the road, and I was in front, and I just walked past them, and I'm about 50 metres down the road talking to myself before I realised they'd all stopped to try and get autographs off them. And I couldn't believe it, and it's the same mentality as you know, watching those girls and boys on Top of the Pops all screaming and stuff. And I just thought it was just stupid, you know.
Well, it is, I say, because you meet these people anyway, and they haven't got anything to say. They don't like you. They look down on you, and you know, they think there's something special, and a lot of them are in special clubs, which they shouldn't be. And I say, you know, why? I mean, I can admire talent, you know, if someone, you know, is a good guitarist and whatnot. You there, Neil? Paula? You there, Neil?
I'm here. I think we just lost him again.
I think so, yeah.
I'll go to a song real quick.
Welcome back to Reality Bytes radio. I nearly said something Independent UK radio, but that was an older incarnation. Reality Bytes radio on 6th of February 2014. And we're going to move into the area of the Madeleine McCann case, but as Chris was saying off air there, it's mainly the police we need to be talking about and their courses of action which they've taken or not taken. And well, Chris, you can take it from there.
Right, yeah. Well, as we know, in 2011, Operation Grange was set up, which was a review into the Portuguese evidence collected in the case of Madeleine McCann. A review, not an investigation, totally different things. Now, it's a bit hard to find out who actually set it up, whether it was David Cameron or Theresa May, because they both take credit for it, which is quite unbelievable, because it's a shambles, an utter shambles, and how people can believe or how the Metropolitan Police have got any credibility left after this shambles is beyond me, because what we've had since 2011 is we've had a gang of white van men who were responsible. We've had a black heroin addict who used to work there who was responsible. We've had a paedophile from Switzerland who was responsible. They've narrowed it down to they think Madeleine was being stalked in the days leading up to her disappearance, and they've narrowed it down to 4 buildings. Well, when you look on the map, there's only 4 buildings that overlook the complex anyway, so that didn't take much detective work. And we've had an old couple walking past who heard her crying, let themselves in, took her. We've had burglars who've taken her. We've had, and all these have been put forward as being credible, serious leads, and all the time. You got to realise that there was all mentioned in the Portuguese investigation. So the dog's having a dream, which is nice. Jasper, and I say, hang on, Jasper, shush. Oi. Don't know what he's dreaming about, but he's happy. And I say that all these are put forward as being proper leads when all the time they've already been investigated. Now, in November of last year, the Met Police applied to the Portuguese authorities to reopen the case. Okay, so there's no investigation by the British police whatsoever. All that we've read in the paper, and there's been untold amounts put in the paper, is all bull, if you like. Not true. It's all been investigated before. And this present one about the mobile phones and these 3 burglars is just, when you think about it, it's just cringe making. Yeah, we've got 4 police officers going over there at the taxpayers' expense for what boils down to a holiday, especially when you know that Theresa May is holding back 4 top secret files on the case. Now, you can't even conduct a review successfully, let alone an investigation, when your Home Secretary has got 4 top secret files. We know that she has because one, the Daily Star friend tried to take her to court to get the information revealed unsuccessfully, obviously, and to I have in my possession a letter sent by someone from South Africa asking about these, and the reply she got was, that they won't be made public or anything. They are top secret. And so I say, how can you have a review, let alone an investigation, when your Home Secretary knows something about a case, but won't reveal what it is? In the meantime, Andy Redwood, I keep calling him because I call him Deadwood in my articles. Andy Redwood is appearing on TV with the McCanns. I think it's something like 80% of murders are committed by somebody known to the victim. Yet they won't even interview the McCanns. The official MSN line and the official police line is the McCanns are innocent, and that is it. We're not going to interview them because we've got no need to interview them because they didn't do it. Well, when you think that Kate McCann refused to answer 49 questions when questioned by the Portuguese authorities, which most of them could have only gone to help the case, of finding her daughter. You got to ask yourself why. Why is this? Why are they so reluctant? And you've also got to ask, why are the police so reluctant to question them or treat them as suspects? Now, we're told that the Portuguese no longer consider them the main suspects, but even that's not true now, because the case was dropped. So before the case was dropped, they was officially unsuspected, shall I say. And but were it to be opened again, then they would be. Now we had this libel trial started in 2009, which is still going on. We sort of kicked off properly last September. again adjourned. It was meant to recommence January 7th, I believe, but it was adjourned again. For this is over that book that Goncalo Amaral wrote. Sort of accusing the McCanns of being involved in her disappearance, which they sued him over, and then tried not to sue him over, and it's not going very well for him because everything in that book is already in the Portuguese evidence. So he's not even working on his own theory. He's working on the theory of where the investigation led, if you like. But we hear no more. Now you get that a lot. And easy way to tell a cover-up is when things never come to court. Like you take that Jacinta Saldana, the nurse who was hanged in December 2012. Or hung herself is the official line. We still haven't had the inquest for that. That opened in March, I think, the first time, and then again in September or November, and it was closed again because they're waiting for more information. Well, if it's a straightforward suicide, what more information could they possibly need? But yet there's been no date set for that. And you can go and look at that the spy in the bag. It took something like 2.5 years for that, for the inquest of that to be ended. And at the inquest they had 2 experts there who between them had tried to zip themselves up in this bag where the spy was found dead. In this bag in a bath, 800 times, and they used people of the same weight and height as this this MI6 spy, and they couldn't do it out of 800 times. It was the verdict sort of misadventure kind of thing, an accident. And they tried to portray him as being a sex fiend and whatnot, but once again, that's just bull. And I say that is a good indication, and this is what's happening with this libel trial that started in 2009, and then the McCanns tried to pull out of it. Well, when it first started, they was that confident that they wasn't even going to bother turning up. Next thing you know, they're trying to pull out of it. Yet they're not being put forward as suspects. So I've also I'm in close contact with a fellow called Stephen Birch, South African businessman, who entered the property of Robert Murat. Robert Murat was the original suspect in Madeleine's disappearance. He lives 150 yards away from the Ocean Club where the McCanns were staying, and to explain it fully, you'd need to read the article, but basically he broke into the property, into the garden, because he suspected Robert Murat, or not suspected Robert Murat, he suspected that Madeleine was buried on Robert Murat's property, which makes sense, I say, but you will have to read the article to see why it makes sense. With one of these ground penetrating radar machines, and it was verified by 6 independent experts that the readings showed there was a body of some kind underwear, as Stephen Birch has said all along. Now, Stephen Birch was mentioned to Kate McCann on This Morning show, Philip Schofield, and as soon as Philip Schofield mentioned his name, she visibly twitched. So once again, I've got the photographs on my website. Yet they will not investigate Robert Murat's drive, although it makes perfect sense for her to be buried there. And we'd say I'm pushing for it in my articles, and Stephen Birch is pushing it, and he's hoping to get these 4 top secret files released off Theresa May, but I don't think he's got any chance on that one. But the police just point blank refuse to even investigate. Now, there was a drive very shortly after Madeleine disappeared, exactly built over the place where Stephen Birch says that Madeleine is buried. It wouldn't be a major job to probe the site first without even excavating it. Yeah, the police won't do it. The Portuguese police won't do it. The McCanns aren't in favour. Robert Murat's not in favour. Although he did say at the time of the trial, that in September, the libel trial, he came out and said that, he's willing to have it dug up. But I said to Stephen at the time that I think that is just a smoke screen to, take the impetus away from the fact that the McCanns are doing badly in this libel trial. And I was right, because what he wanted for them being able to dig this drive up was way out of the price range of the newspaper and Stephen Birch, who has spent £50,000 of his own money on his own investigation. And I say, you got to ask yourself why, when it's such a simple task. I mean, Stephen Birch has everything to lose. The McCanns, the Metropolitan Police, the Portuguese authorities, they have nothing to lose by digging up the drive, because, or in theory, they have nothing to lose, should I say, because if she's there, they found Madeleine. If she's not, they can say, we told you so, but we've done what you wanted. We've done what the people want, and there are a lot of people, pushing for this dig, but they won't. And instead of even tackling the subject in a bit, it's just not mentioned. Stephen Birch is never mentioned. Yeah, he's mentioned in 150 articles worldwide, apart from over here and in Portugal. Similarly, that Crime Watch special that Andy Deadwood and the McCanns appeared on, that wasn't shown in Portugal. Now, the two main Portuguese TV stations both bent over backwards to try and secure the right show to screen this Crime Watch, and they wasn't allowed. But the only place that it could have possibly done any good was being shown in Portugal. I mean, how many holiday makers was in the Ocean Club at the time who lived in Germany and Holland, where it was also shown? How many English people? So it needed to be shown in Portugal, but it wasn't, and it wasn't allowed to for quotes legal reasons, which the two main TV stations, Portuguese main TV stations, could never fully grasp. What was meant by these legal reasons, but they weren't allowed to show it. And I say it is big cover up, because we've got 4 policemen over there at the moment at taxpayers' expense, not even investigating, because they're not allowed to investigate. Hoping that the Portuguese are going to investigate these so-called free burglars who were identified by the large number of calls that they made, which was 7 years ago. Well, if someone's burgling somewhere, you don't phone each other when you're all together anyway. That's just common sense. So even if they was to interview these burglars, or these so-called burglars, how they know they're burglars, I don't know. I suppose through their police records, but whatever. But even if they're going to interview, what are they going to say? Did you take Madeleine McCann? No. Oh, all right, fair enough, thank you. And that's all they can hope for, because there's no DNA there. There's no, prints or anything. So it's just a total waste of money. All designed, as I say, to take the focus off the McCanns. Now, any sensible police force would have had them two pulled in a long time ago, but they won't. Yeah, we have high profile, Gordon Brown, he was involved, Prince Charles, he was involved. Never before involved in these kind of cases. You got to ask yourself why. Well, Jerry McCann did do, he was involved in a report, a major report, which West Germany commissioned one exactly the same time, and what it was is to see whether the effects of radiation was affecting children who lived near power stations. Because there was high incidences of children by power stations contracting cancer. And Jerry McCann was brought in for the English report. Now, Jerry McCann is a heart specialist, not a cancer specialist. So straight away you think, well, why is a heart specialist putting together a report on cancer, you know? And anyway, the upshot was the West German report came back agreeing that, yes, children living near power stations, nuclear power stations, were much more likely to contract cancer than what children living further afield were. The English report came back, despite the figures showing a huge increase in the number of children living by power stations getting cancer, rather than those living further afield. The report came back as stating that there was no evidence to suggest children living near power stations are any more susceptible to cancer than those living further afield. So, was it something to do with that? I don't know. I say, just funny how he's sort of involved, and he's a heart specialist, not a cancer specialist. But that is speculation. But for some reason, a large number of high-profile people are covering up for the McCanns. And you got to ask yourself why. I mean, Jerry McCann is a Freemason, and we all know about Freemasonry, Neil. But even then, it's got to the point where they're just looking absolutely ridiculous in the eyes of the world. Who can see exactly what the likes of me and you can see, yet they will not take action. They won't do anything about it. So, you know.
Do you think it's gone so far down the road that the authorities can't be seen to be backtracking at all, because they'll be caught out and they cover up themselves? Do you think that they just have to keep it going to cover up their own inaction?
I don't know about it, but certainly they're just embarrassing themselves. I say, well, you know, 4 policemen over there. We're being told in the MSN that there's imminent arrests, but there aren't imminent arrests. You know, these imminent arrests have been coming for 7 years now. There aren't imminent arrests. They'd look more, in my view anyway, a lot more upstanding, if you like, for want of a better word, if they backtracked and said, yeah, you know, look, we messed up here, you know, but they won't. And the consequences of them not is that they are looking absolutely ridiculous, you know, and they have no credibility whatsoever, apart from amongst the the brain dead Joe public who still believe that the McCanns were innocent of any involvement, which is utterly ridiculous. And Goncalo Amaral said, just slightly before the court case was meant to resume at the beginning of January, he said, we looked at the question of these burglars and ruled them out. Now, despite what the British MSN would have you believe, the Portuguese investigation was very, very well run under very, very difficult circumstances. And I say that because they was under pressure from the British government not to arrest them for McCanns. The McCanns were non-cooperative, and you have these 4 top secret files as well, which contain whatever they contain, you know. And on top of that, you have the question of when. I think we've lost him again, Paula.
Listen to Reality Bytes Radio with our guest Chris Spivey of chrisspivey.org. We were discussing the Madeleine McCann case and the farce of a police investigation, I suppose. And one of the questions that came in was regarding the police's inaction and getting a warrant to investigate the driveway in question. And Chris wanted to cover that and say that's a fairly important aspect to the case. So, Chris, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah. One of the reasons put forward for not reinvestigating this Robert Murat's mother's driveway was that the police had already searched the property and supposedly used ground penetrating radar on the back garden. Now, Robert's or pictures that I put on my website, what Stephen Birch sent me, prove that where he says Madeleine is buried, obviously it was done very, very quickly. It had to be done very quickly, and it's not particularly deep. What they've done, they've thrown a load of rubble, bits of wood and whatnot over it. Now, at the time that the police, Portuguese police, supposedly used ground penetrating radar on the back garden, this rubble wasn't moved, and for ground penetrating radar to work, it has to be flat on the ground, with the ground, you know. Whereas to go over this area, they would have had to tilt it because of this rubble, and it wouldn't have given a proper reading. So, and I say that's provable by the photos on the website. So straight away that makes a mockery of the superstition that you know, they'd used ground penetrating radar once. They don't need to do it again because they do. And since then, that rubble was added to. And now, like I was saying to you in the break, Neil, what's happened is they've put the Murats have put down this driveway to nowhere. It doesn't go nowhere. And out front of their villa, they've got an in and out drive with a double garageway. The property is lived on by Robert Murat's mother, who doesn't drive. Yeah, they put this driveway over this area where Madeleine's meant to be buried, which leads to nowhere. And the reason that Stephen thinks that this was done is because the Murats do have dogs, because he had to dodge the dogs when he was doing when he entered the property illegally, and he thinks the dogs was because she's not buried particularly deep. The independent experts who've checked his findings put it at maybe 2 foot, 2.5 foot at the very, very deepest down. And Stephen thinks that his driveway was put there because the dogs was digging up that area where she was where she was buried. But like I say, you know, it wasn't properly checked by the Portuguese police because this rubble was never moved. And if the rubble was never moved, then the area where Stephen says that Madeleine is buried wasn't properly checked. So, and I say his findings where the rubble was moved show that there is something buried there. Yet they won't go in to investigate. They won't get a warrant. You know, as far as we're concerned over here, most people don't even know about this because you won't read anything about it in the mainstream media. Not a thing. And you've got to ask yourself why, mate. You there? You there?
Yep. I'm just having problems with Skype again. No, it's I couldn't manage to unmute the mic or something. No, not at all. No, I don't know what's happening with this tonight. Never mind. Yeah, I mean, we spoke off air. I mean, any parent or any sibling or whatever, if it was any one of your relatives or even somebody, even if it's a neighbour, and you thought that the body was buried somewhere, you'd want something done about it. And as we said off air, especially if it's one of your own children, you wouldn't wait for a search warrant. You'd be in there with a shovel doing it yourself, and you wouldn't care if you got arrested doing it. You know, you'd do it.
Years ago, I was in the building trade, Neil, and I used to dig a lot of holes. I've dug a lot of holes in my time, you know, and I could dig that easily and put it back with no mess within a day, you know, and put it back just like it was on my own. That's how easy I am. We're not talking about concrete driving, we're talking about a rushed job with a sort of a Lemix type sub base and then just topped off with shingle, you know. It's sort of a capping, for want of a better word, more than anything else. Yet they wouldn't even have to dig it up. All they'd have to do is just, you know, bang a probe through, which you could probably do with a road pin and then drop a probe in there, you know, and check what comes out on the other end. And that's all they have to do. Now, Stephen Birch has everything to lose by them sort of digging up the Murat driveway. Yet the Portuguese police, the British police, the McCanns, all have nothing to lose. I mean, if Madeleine's there, they found Madeleine. If she's not there, they can turn around and say, "Yeah, well, we told you so." But you know, we've done what was expected of us, sort of thing, you know. So, but they won't. They won't. Whereas Stephen, if she's not there, everyone will turn around and say, look at you twat. Saying it was so all along, he was so and you're wrong, and he stands to become the figure of ridicule. So you got to ask yourself, why won't they? Why won't? And I say it's not as if he's insignificant, because these reports of his findings and whatnot have been published around the world, apart from in England, and the only time that I'm aware that it's been mentioned was live on This Morning with Philip Schofield when he asked Kay McCann if about his findings, and she turned around and she said, at the end of the day, who is he? Well, he's the person who's been mentioned on live television for a start. He's the person that the police went round to her house to inform her of her findings, and there was going to be in the newspapers across the world the next day. She certainly knows who he is. I know who he is, and plenty more people know who he is. And he might be the person who's found your daughter. So instead of sneering and saying, who at the end of the day, who is he? You should be eternally grateful to him if you've got nothing to hide.
Absolutely, and I think the consensus on that would be she's got everything to hide and everything to lose. To me, she looks like a broken woman. Certainly, the last article that I put on my site, or the last but one, shows pictures taken at unguarded moments, and Jerry looks like he wants to rip her head off all the time. But supposedly they're meant to be separated now anyway, because she's calling herself Healy again. But she to me, she looks like a woman, a broken woman, like who's got a terrible secret that's weighing on the mind. Which, if you had your daughter buried thousands of miles away in a foreign country in a shallow grave, you would be haunted by that secret. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's possibly the place to leave that, I suppose. Maybe we'll go for a short piece of music and we'll come back and talk about your involvement in the ATOS demo. I saw you on there as a supporter of that.
We still on?
Yeah.
The ATOS demo. To be honest, I've been following events of ATOS, but not as closely as what I should, Neil. I was asked to put that publicise the demonstration, and it's something I believe needs demonstrating against, because that they are killing people. They are absolutely killing people. So that's the reason that is. It's not so much an article about ATOS. It's more just publicising the demonstration, which I think is on the 19th of next month.
Yeah, and if people go to, I've not got the full link in my head here. I've got the link on the Community Press Group website advertising the ATOS demos, and there's a number, I think it's 64 towns and cities where demonstrations are going to take place at the moment. I think there's going to be additions to that. Myself and my colleague will be down in London. Alan Taylor-Shearer, who's on at 10 o'clock after this, he'll be up in Norwich covering it. And there'll be other people around the country, I'm sure, there with cameras and stuff, filming stuff. No, the ATOS thing, I've been covering it the last couple of weeks and written a few things about it, and their connections to the likes of Microsoft and IBM and Siemens and their murky pasts. So, we're not talking centuries ago. We're only talking within the lifespan of people who are in their 70s and 80s nowadays, who would have been born at the time that these types of companies were using slave labour and facilitating the murder of millions of people. So, it's not a big leap, as somebody said to me recently. A colleague of mine said, "Oh, that's a bit of a leap to suggest that these companies are still into that kind of thing." Well, they made their money off of it back in the 40s, and they certainly ain't going to stop making money off it if they can get away with it now, and that's exactly what they're doing. But we'll go to another piece of music and then we'll come back, and you can pick a couple of more stories off your website, Chris. The next bit's Rise Against and Make It Stop, September's Child. Welcome back. to the last 20 minutes of Reality Bytes Radio with our guest Chris Spivey. And we were talking off air. I suppose it takes us back to the start of the broadcast. We were talking about Robert Greene's blog and the Violate Club and the kind of perverts that we have in our judiciary and our schools even, who are quite happy to go along to clubs and supposedly abuse blow-up dolls of children. Whether the blow-up dolls are actually real children, who knows? But maybe we'll find out one day, and the names of the perpetrators. But Chris, you were talking about an article you have on your site about satanic abusers of children. Yeah,
well, it's more of a list, really, Neil, than an article. It's called The Who's Who of Satanic Child Abuse, and what it comes from is I was sent this report by RAINS, which is the Ritual Abuse Information Network and Support, set up to look into child abuse and satanic child abuse. And I've come by a copy of this report on someone called Helen G. Now, Helen G was a victim of mind control, like Kathy O'Brien sort of thing, and horribly abused. And it's information that she gave forward, and what it is just one long list. Now, some people on there won't mean anything to anyone, there's a Joseph Stein, a Julie Stein, and a Martin Stein who was involved, but they don't sort of mean anything to anybody. But then as you go down the list, you get Lord William Rees-Mogg, Meg, and I'm just sort of Lord Montague, Mike Hancock. Well, Mike Hancock's in the news at the moment, which, as an aside, I've been sent a load of stuff on him, including a recording of him talking about abuse. He's the Liberal MP who is accused of touching and forcing himself on one of his constituents who had special needs, but he's also accused of sleeping with underage girls in Poland Romania. When he went to Romania in his capacity of Mensa. Most interesting for me, he's the head of the NSPCC Southern Department. Well, I say the NSPCC. If you donate to the NSPCC, you are donating to help fund child abuse, rather than prevent it, because you've only got to look at the likes of Prince Andrew and what was his name? What's his name?
Epstein, is it? Epstein?
No. The Labour fella, Prince of Darkness. Mandelson, Peter Mandelson.
Mandelson, yeah. I just put that in the chat box, actually. Mandy Mandelson is on this list.
Yeah, who incidentally is on this list as well. Charles Clarke MP, he's on there. Peter de Savary. Now, I don't know if that means much to people. It means a lot to me from when I was in the building, because he was developing the area that I was working on. He's just described as an entrepreneur. Lord Porchester. Well, Lord Porchester is supposedly Prince Andrew's dad. Now, that might sound really, really far-fetched, but you need to read my article, Monsters, Inc., a very, very successful article of mine that's on my website, which goes into why Lord Porchester is the father of Prince Andrew. Who else is on there? We've got the Marquis of Blandford, Lord Moyne, Marquis of Bath, Virginia Bottomley. Well, she's always with the usual suspects, isn't she?
Isn't she in the frame for this? In the frame on a kind of unofficial suspect list for this female MP who was abusing somebody.
Indeed, yeah, and her husband Peter Bottomley. Definitely.
What appropriate name?
Yeah, indeed. I see that Edwina Curry was getting a lot of stick over that news well, for one reason or other. She's very good friends with Derek Lord. Well, I exposed Derek Lord, and on the strength of what I wrote about him, he fled to South Africa. Now, Derek Lord is probably best known for his appearance in Big Brother 5. Where he was billed as being Margaret Thatcher's speechwriter, but he was so much more than that. He was caught up in just about every scandal going. The cash for questions scandal, he was caught up in there. Very good friends with Ian Greer. He is a paedophile, and I call him a paedophile now. And if he wants to sue me, that's fine. But he did say at the time, when people were saying, if it's not true, why don't you sue me? And he said, he turned around and I quote, he said, "No one believes the crap he writes." Well, that isn't true, because a lot of people did believe it. In fact, so many that he fled to South Africa. So she was getting a lot of stick. Edwina Covey, I'm talking about, was getting a lot of stick for being friends with him. Peter Mandelson on this list here, he says, 11306, British Commissioner of EU for Trade since 2004, involved in cult in France and Brussels, likes boys, pays cold cash for rent boys, but seems to be part of it. He ordered severe torture prior to murder of boy Kevin, aged 17, and ran away from Newcastle, who had some hold of him and was blackmailing him. Kevin was tortured and killed, body dumped in sea, South Coast, after being cut up. That's what it says on it. And this report, I say, is freely available on my site. Just have a look who else is on there.
I believe the late McAlpine's on there as well, isn't he?
I can't remember whether
I think so. I did read this, actually. I remember reading it now.
Alan Johnson MP, he's there. Elton John's on there. Well, I've long suspected Elton John of being a wrong 'un. Ian McClellan, Darrell Winton, Pam St Clements, that's Fat Pat from EastEnders, KD Lang. They're all contributors to this group of satanic paedophiles. Peter Tobin, he not so long ago was in the papers, convicted of murder, rape of 2 little girls. I'll tell you who else is on there. The one who was cleared of the Giuldendo murder. Jimmy Tarbuck, he's on there. Well, nothing more has been said about that since he was pulled in for questioning by Operation U Tree detectives. Earl Spencer, brother of Princess Diana, he's been seen at their meetings. Let's have a look. And that goes in there. He also gives details of places where these things were, these satanic meetings and sacrifices were held. Max Bygrave's house on Bournemouth Cliff Tops, that's one, that was just meetings, it says on here, but it is a veritable who's who. And I say Rains are a credible group, they're not no amateur sort of setup, So that's really available anyway. And I say it's all taken from information given by this Helen G and others who were part of this sect. And on top of those who take part, it's who the minders are, who the fixers are, and whatnot. And I understand that in total, I've only got 19 pages of it, but there are over 160 more pages, which I'm hoping to get sent to me very soon.
Good stuff. What's the name of that article, Chris?
The Who's Who of Satanic Child Abuse.
Okay, somebody was just asking this so they could...
Yeah, the Who's Who of Satanic Child Abuse. As a picture of me and Peter Mandelson on the front. It's not a real picture.
I think I actually posted that on Southern Independent UK, actually. I did, yeah. So I did read it. The late Lord McAlpine's on there as well. Conveniently used.
I just had a quick. I mean, there's a lot of names on there. Just sort of David Frosty's on there. I've always thought him very suspect. Obviously, Ted Heath's on there. Michael Winner, another one I always suspected. Peter Goldsmith. He's on there, Attorney General in Tony Blair's government. Lord McAlpine. Present Baron's father, also called Robert, was mentioned by BS in late 1980s. Alvin Stardust, Michael Portillo. Michael Portillo, although he denies it, there's proof to suggest that he was on holiday with David Lord, who I was just talking about, an awful, vile pervert who responsible for putting many children in the hospital following them being raped by him, and suspected of murder. Good friends with Ian Greer. Ian Greer was, of course, mentioned recently by Ben Fellows, because it was in his office that he alleged that Ken Clark touched him when Ken Clark thought he was 15, although he was 18 at the time. So I say that man is caught up in every single thing. He paid for a young David Cameron to go abroad to South Africa at the time of apartheid, I was as well. And in fact, he was very good friends with David Cameron, to such an extent that he got invited to his wedding. And David Lord had the wedding invitation on his website, but everything's all been taken down. You go to his wiki page now, you find no mention of Cameron there now whatsoever, because obviously they're disassociating themselves. But they should have done that back in the 90s, when he was caught up in the cash for questions, of course, which Ian Greer was also caught up in. And Michael Colvin MP, who died under quite mysterious circumstances, that fire that killed all them abuse survivors in Brighton, he's meant to be caught up in that as well. Obscene man, who's very good friends, incidentally, with the disgraced MP who was caught up in the cash for questions, Hamilton, his wife Christine. Very good friends with them, and he actually gave them an alibi when Christine Hamilton was accused of sexually abusing that young lady. And David Lord said at the time that he was having dinner with them at the time of that attack, and they subsequently got off. But that was a very dubious decision anyway, because there is a lot of evidence to suggest that Christine Hamilton was involved in abusing this woman. Of course, if you watch the Louis Theroux program with the Hamiltons, they're totally weird couple anyway. And you know, she certainly comes across as a sexual predator, and him a bit of a voyeur. That's the impression I got anyway.
Well, I think when you look at some of these characters, I think I can't remember what it was. It was a Tory Party conference or some other event.
We lost him.
Yeah.
Apologies, folks. I didn't realise we were actually off air. I got cut off again. That's the sixth time tonight. Chris, we were just talking there. You might have to repeat that again because you weren't on air. I'm basically saying when you look at these people, there's nothing to them. There's no substance to them. They're just it's all fakery. It's all the emotion that they put on is just pure fakery. There's just no substance to them at all.
They are actors, Neil, and wasn't there a thing last week about the money that they've spent on acting lessons, because that's all they are, actors, but they're actors in a very elite club. All 650 of them are corrupt at best, taking money under false pretences, money that they're not entitled to. And at worst, child murderers. Now, people can't understand it, and they say, "Oh, well, yeah, he's a big crap," but like they all are. Well, to me, that's a terrible thing to say, because if you're in Parliament, you're a politician, you should be whiter than white, not a little bit corrupt, but they're all like that. Which is a terrible state of affairs. But they're a lot worse than what people think, and people can't get their heads around the fact that they are all involved in child abuse or covering up for child abuse. They're not working for us. They're all self-serving, all egotistical actors who are doing the bidding of the banks and the major corporations. There is nothing in our interests whatsoever, which I say you could be proved just by the monetary system alone, So anyone who thinks they're a little bit corrupt, but is fooling themselves to a large extent, and it's got to be changed. It's all got to be changed. These people are criminals. They want put in on trial. Same with the royal family. They're all criminals. They're all paedophiles. I'll say that here, and then live on air. Do you know what? They're scum. They are scum, and they need hanging.
Well, I've said similar myself, and I totally agree with you. When we were at Bilderberg, we had Charlie Skelton running the Guardian tent on behalf of Bilderberg, as he admitted in his own rag, The Guardian, and he was approached at one point, and this is on film, and I don't know when the guys that filmed it are going to use it, but it's certainly going to come out. He was asked live on the camera what he thought about pornography. Now, I've said it before on here, and I'll say it again. He is a hardcore pornography producer, and he admits it, and he's written a book about it, along with his Guardian colleague, Victoria Corrin. So that's the kind of disgusting people that the Guardian employs these days, and we're supposed to believe that Mr. Skelton and his wife are out there fighting the good cause against Bilderberg. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, because they were there acting on behalf of them. But the camera in his face, he was asked what he thought of pornography, and he was quite, proud of the fact that he'd produced a pornographic movie in Holland, and it was put to him by the cameraman just out of the blue. What was his thought on child porn? And his whole demeanour changed. He went bright scarlet. His tongue came out between his teeth as if he was a child caught lying, and all he could answer was, "It's not to my taste."
No, well, now, go on. Sorry, carry on.
That says it all. So, what is to his taste? I mean, if somebody says that to me, I'd say it's effing disgusting. These guys need castrated. They need strung up. End of story. Never see them again, or something to that effect, with a lot more expletives added, I'm sure.
Yeah, but a lot of them do say that, though, don't they? Although they are involved. I mean, I would imagine if you was to ask Peter Mandelson what he thought of, child rape and whatnot, he'd call it disgusting. If not that no one will ask him point blank. But then we have Harriet Harman pushing for legalising child porn as long as no child was hurt. Well, what a ridiculous thing to say. Do you know, how can a child not be hurt, even if they're not hurt physically? They've got to be hurt emotionally, do you know? And her and her husband, I can't remember her husband's name, but he keeps getting caught on Twitter posting links to gay websites and whatnot. And both of them, they're all obscene, Neil. They're all obscene, mate. They're all involved in it. They're all corrupt. They're all ripping us off. And blaming the unemployed and the disabled.
Yeah.
You know, when we're paying their TV licenses, and even Jackie, what's her face, try to charge us for her husband's pornography.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous, mate.
And Harriet Harman, of course. Harriet Harman, a supporter of paedophilia.
Yeah, and she was one of the advocates, along with Little Legs, John Burkow, for getting the so they didn't have to disclose their allowances, what they claim, which had it been allowed would have given them license to rob. I mean, they don't take a lot of notice of the rules anyway, so they're still getting caught. Expenses are still more or less at the same level as they was when they was all exposed. Of course, there was the scapegoats made there, but and the rest got away with it. I'm working on an article at the moment, which I had to show because of this Woolwich article about the people caught up in that expenses scandal and what they got away with, and why, the fact that they was never prosecuted. And this includes David Cameron, our own Prime Minister, sort of ripping the nation off, and going on going publicly saying that, anyone caught up with in this expense allowance thing, he won't work with them. Well, that's not true for a start, because he did with David Davis. So who's on that list, incidentally? So there you go, mate. They're all corrupt. None of them should be where they are, and until they're removed. And I'm not just talking about the Conservatives. I'm talking about the whole lot of them. Until they're all removed, nothing's ever going to improve. In fact, things are going to get much worse. And you were talking about the Nazis a little while ago there. The laws that are being implemented slowly in this country are the perfect blueprint. They follow exactly what Hitler did when he came to power, and people need to realise that the exact same laws and restrictions and whatnot as what the Nazis employed in the early 1930s in Germany, and we know where that led to.
Yeah, well, as I say, I read out the ATOS article I did last week, or Alan read out the post that comes up after this. We're following the same pattern of IBM going into every country that Hitler invaded and getting all the records of people that they want to get rid of. And that's exactly what this care.data database is all about, because it's not just asking for your NHS number and your postcode and a couple of other things. It's asking for your ethnicity, your eating habits, your drinking habits, your smoking habits, your family history, all of it. And they admit that they can identify you, yet they're still trying to tell you that they can't. They're going to know exactly where you live, what number house you're in, all of it.
They know that anyway with me, Neil.
Well, and me.
I get invited out by the Essex Chief of Police to discuss illegal content on my website.
That's nice of them.
Quite funny.
I'll be going down for Christmas dinner next. Who knows?
Well, they know exactly where. I think actually Paula said when you was cut off there that I have some watches on me. I don't know how she can tell that, but that's what.
Well, this is the first time I think nearly in double figures for the amount of times I've been cut off in 2 hours. I don't think it's ever happened before. So you're obviously very popular with GCHQ or somebody.
Yeah.
But who cares? Who cares? Yeah, let them listen. They might learn something.
They might do. I've just had to move the website, obviously, from Russia to Iceland because of these DDOs. And I did put an article on there yesterday. Edward Snowden supposedly revealed that the British government is involved out their own department, which is, fully set up to attack websites like mine and whatnot. Well, I knew that anyway. I didn't need Edward Snowden to tell me that, but I put the article on yesterday. Sorry. But certainly because of these DDOs, I had to move websites from Russia to Iceland. We've just landed in Iceland, and at the moment it seems to be all right. We seem to have cured the problem. How long that before, I don't know.
Yeah, we were talking about shifting hours shortly as well. But anyway, we're just up to 10 o'clock and with the next host coming on. So thanks very much, Chris. And we'll get you on again when you've got another few articles up and a lot more to say, I'm sure.
We'll have a lot to say when the Woolwich article comes out. I say that if I haven't already proved it, and I believe that I have proved it, it's a false flag, whichever way anyone looks at it. But there will be no denying that it was a false flag once this article comes out.
Right, we could do a whole show on that. Whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, mate. Cheers. Take care.